Hey, you geeks! They say that those who don't study history are doomed to repeat it. I'd say for certain that those who don't study English history are doomed to be surprised by HBO's new House of the Dragon. Martin was quite open about his inspiration for this show's story at last month's Comic-Con.
This show was based on an earlier period of English history called the Anarchy.
Fortunately for you geeks, I had a Plantagenet history phase coinciding with my sparkly vampire obsession during puberty. Given that I was a relatively sheltered teenager with an interest in British history, dragons, and internet piracy, of course I followed Game of Thrones. But I quickly lost interest due to Martin's representation of women in his world. I take issue with Martin's assertion that his work is no more misogynistic than history itself.
I don't think Westeros is particularly more anti-woman or more misogynistic than real life and what we call history.
I do think that women have struggled throughout all of history, and yes, there have always been men and women like the ones in Westeros, but not all. This video will cover the sovereigns of England leading up to and through the Anarchy, and compare them to their House of the Dragon counterparts. This story has already been told in Martin's prequel book, Blood and Fire, so I will lean heavily on that for my conjecture about the show. Though I really know nothing about the show's direction, this video may contain spoilers. I do hope the show will stick closer to the actual history because truth is always stranger than Martin's fiction. William the Rebranded. After the Roman Empire fell and Viking Scandinavians picked up the free real estate of England, the land was divided into 7 kingdoms, all of which fell to the conquest of William of Normandy, who is the best example of victors get to write history, though history still remembers that he was illegitimate. Westeros' Aegon Targaryen is clearly inspired by this conqueror.
It's named King's Landing because that's where Aegon the Conqueror, Aegon the Dragon, landed with his ships and when he decided to begin the conquest of Westeros.
Unlike the Targaryens, William did not have dragons and had enough sense to make a throne which, if not comfortable, was at least not lethal to sit on in and of itself. This is emblematic of the biggest difference between Targaryens and Plantagenets. The latter had just enough sanity to make them believable humans, while I do not believe that the Targaryens have any capacity for anything but power and the pursuit of it. Henry. The 4th son of William the Conqueror and 3rd Norman King of England, his elder brother William held the throne after their father's death, but his reign came to an abrupt end due to a hunting accident. Sound familiar?
And I want everyone to taste the boar that got me.
Historians have later deemed this to be a true accident. After all, the kingship of England wasn't that grand when Henry began his rule. This is where the House of the Dragon begins to show some originality. The Dance of Dragons War comes at the height of Targaryen power.
This period in Westeros was a very decadent time. So you get to see what the realm looks like before it descends into the detritus and post-decadence of war that you see in the original series.
According to the wiki, the Targaryen Civil War happens from 129 to 131 after conquest. Thus the Targaryens had twice as long to build their influence in Westeros compared to the Plantagenets' influence in England. Besides this time dilation, Viserys I, the king on the Iron Throne when the show begins, is quite similar to Henry I.
Viserys I, who is the heir that was chosen by the Great Council. When Jaehaerys passes away, he takes over, and he is now reigning over the 7 kingdoms.
Both were appointed king by committee, after the former king's death, left the kingdom with no clear heir. Henry I was chosen over his brother Robert because Robert was gone on crusade.
And sent him off on that crazy crusade.
And Henry was present in England. Viserys, according to the show, was chosen for king because the only other legitimate candidate was a woman.
After all his voyages, he's married to Rhaenys Targaryen, the queen who never was.
Here is how Westeros comes off as slightly more sexist than history. True, Henry had sisters, and their birth order was not recorded. But his path to kingship came at plowing over all of his siblings' interests, regardless of gender. Not to mention his sister Cecilia, as an abbess in northern France, would have been wielding considerable power without the constraints of an earthly husband. No correlations exist in Westeros, just Rhaenyra the jilted.
Men would sooner put the realm to the torch than see a woman ascend the Iron Throne.
William. Henry I's son and heir, William, will likewise be missing from the Targaryen lineup. Viserys' legitimate son, according to the wiki, is said to have died in infancy, unnamed. So I'm very curious as to why it took so long for this conversation to happen.
I consider the matter urgent. That of your succession.
Maybe the show will give us an analog to the drunken revel which is said to have incurred God's wrath when those aboard refused the priest's offer to bless the vessel with holy water. William is also said to have died when he turned his lifeboat back to rescue his half-sister, Matilda Fitzroy. The rescue, of course, didn't work. Even the most sober of drowning men are likely to kill those around them in pursuit of their own safety. But of course, such a scene capturing humanity's most noble and vile characteristics doesn't translate well into Westeros, where women only exist to be screwed, either figuratively or literally. Which brings us to Matilda. The second child of Henry I, Matilda had been married off to be the Empress of the Holy Roman Empire. When her first husband died around the same time William did, Henry called her home, named her his heir, and had all the nobles swear to her. This is where we get the iconic trailer scene.
I, Rickon Stark.
I, Corlys Velaryon.
I, Ormond Baratheon.
Promise to be faithful
To King Viserys.
and to his named heir.
Princess Rhaenyra.
The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle records the event as: the king caused the archbishops, bishops, abbots, earls, and all the thanes who were present to swear and place England and Normandy after his death in the hands of his daughter, the princess, who had been the wife of the Emperor of Saxony, and then he sent her to Normandy, accompanied by her brother, Robert, Earl of Gloucester, and he caused her to be wedded to the son of the Earl of Anjou, named Geoffrey Martel. I do not miss that the chronicler omitted Matilda's name and referred to her solely in relation to the men around her. But Matilda, I think, still was better off than Rhaenyra Targaryen. The Targaryen princess, although highly courted as the heir to the realm, somehow was forced to wed Laenor Velaryon, who was not interested in women, of course. While technically not an impediment to him supporting her political goals, the show has downplayed his role in their promotion. Matilda had slightly better fortune in husbands. Geoffrey of Anjou was supportive of Matilda's claim for the English throne. He did have mistresses. I'm not nominating him for Husband of the Year, but his great-grandfather, Fulk the Black, burned his first wife to death. Yes, it's not easy being a woman in the Middle Ages, but the Angevins have a reputation for being motivated by love and passion, not just power alone. I don't think it's a stretch to compare Anjou, the land to the south of England, full of hot-blooded, passionate men, to Dorne in Westeros, a land also ruled by the Martells. Dorne, though you wouldn't know it from the show, is said to be the only land in Westeros where women are considered competent to rule. I suppose Joffrey's better qualities will be portrayed by Christian Cole in the show, a knight of Dornish descent.
Do you think the realm will ever accept me as their queen?
Rewinding to the point of Henry's death, Matilda was in Anjou with her husband, while Stephen was at home and very manly. The fact that he was a man and Matilda wasn't was a consideration for the local barons to prefer him to Matilda. Besides being female, Matilda was stuck in northern France and lacked sufficient funds to wage war. Until, that is, Robert, Earl of Gloucester, defected from Stephen's court and chose to support her, due to Stephen's incompetence as a ruler. Likewise, Stephen lacked the funds to wage war, but he hired mercenaries anyway, and everyone destroyed the countryside. There are various accounts of her character. Historian William Malmesbury, generally considered to be Matilda's most sympathetic historian, has nothing to say about her character. His focus was more on the war generally. The whole year was troubled by the brutalities of war. There were many castles all over England, each defending its own district, or, to be more truthful, plundering it. Accounts written by the Gesta Stephani, that is, a history written to praise the works of Stephen, her rival, gleefully recount Matilda's vanity. What a sign of the utmost superciliousness and arrogance when, the leading men of the whole realm, with bended knee to make their request, she repeatedly sent them away, insultingly rebuffed them with an arrogant answer. Lastly, John of Worcester's Chronicle, whose author clearly sided with Stephen and who died before the Anarchy ended, stated that upon arriving in Gloucester, Matilda enacted tortures worthy of Decius and Nero, and deaths of various kinds were imposed on those unwilling to submit to her. Yet, if she was as egotistical as claimed, then why did she retire from the war? Instead, she trained her son, Henry II, to rule, and he did an admirable job. In addition to losing Matilda's supportive husband, Martin robbed Rhaenyra of Matilda's legacy. After her husband's death and her son unsucceeded Stephen in England, she went on to rule Normandy on her own and played a vital role in Anglo-French relations. Rhaenyra, on the other hand, according to the wiki, will show no such prudence. The role of elder stateswoman denied the throne, but still affluent, has been given to Rhaenys, her aunt, while Rhaenyra, like every other woman to sit on the Iron Throne, will prove all the haters right by going mad with power, paranoid, and becoming hated by the mob. Although Matilda did fail to secure the people of London, other queens have since succeeded where she did incite riot. For not even England has been so cruel to its queens as Martin's pen. Both Rhaenyra and Matilda's sons would inherit the throne from their mother's rival, ushering a new era of peace. The women's journeys are very different. The rival. Here is where we see the show already breaking from the established canon.
And there was much rejoicing.
Historically, Matilda waged war against her cousin, Stephen, who, although popular at the beginning of his reign, did not remain so for long. It was clear that the English preferred him just barely to Matilda as the devil they knew rather than the woman they did not. In the wiki, Rhaenyra waged war against her half-brother Aegon, son of Alicent Hightower and her father from later in his life. The show has been rather cagey on just who Alicent will marry.
You are the king. Your duty is to take a new wife.
Though it is likely to be Rhaenyra's uncle, the oh-so-subtly named Daemon Targaryen, who is built up as Rhaenyra's rival.
I will not be made to choose between my brother and my daughter.
In the wiki, it is Alicent's father who chooses to abandon the Viserys' will and appoint a male successor to the throne. So it is logical he would wed his daughter to his newly made king. Although the show teases that Otto and Daemon currently do not get along, I would believe them becoming unlikely allies in the common cause of bigotry against Rhaenyra. This is Martin's Westeros, after all. The only compelling plot I've found in the show thus far is the story of the Iron Throne coming between the childhood friends of Rhaenyra and Alicent. If we look to their historical counterparts during the Anarchy when Matilda had Stephen captured, Stephen's queen brought up her strength and besieged them in Winchester, till there was so great a famine in the town they could endure it no longer. Then stole they out and fled, and the besiegers were aware of them and followed them, and they took Robert, Earl of Gloucester, and led him to Rochester, and imprisoned him there, and the Empress fled into a monastery. If Rhaenyra captures Daemon and she doesn't kill him immediately, will we see Alicent take up arms to secure her place next to the Iron Throne?
Have you never imagined yourself on the Iron Throne?
I doubt she will be motivated for love of Daemon, as the show teases that it is Daemon who will play the monarch who goes mad with power.
I do think on some level he wants to cause chaos.
Maybe the show will play Rhaenyra's paranoia and bloodlust of acts of desperation against the Mad King and his spiteful wife. An interesting premise, but as of now, I find it unlikely that I will empathize with any of these characters. Though I could not care less about who wins the Iron Throne, I will say that the scenes at least look pretty and the costumes are on point. Maybe my morbid curiosity will scope the show out, and if there's anything worth saying, I will find time to say it. But for now, I will focus my interest on the Rings of Power. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe if you would like to see more. Your patronage is greatly appreciated.